What's up, folks? Anthony Armstrong here, former NFL receiver and host of Believe in Commanders. And with the basketball season here, you can now pick combo projections across football and basketball from the Specials League. It's a league specifically created for combo projections that includes two or more players from different sports or leagues. Make your way over to prizepicks.com/believe and use the code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for a first deposit match up to $100. You must be present in certain states. Visit prizepicks.com for restrictions and details. Pick more or pick less. It's that easy. Prize Picks.
We wish you a Merry Christmas. We wish you a Merry Christmas. We wish you a Merry Christmas. And a New Year. Your tidings will bring to you and your king. We wish you a Merry Christmas. And a Happy New Year.
Hello and welcome to Gegenpressing, the German football podcast from the Football Grad Network. I'm your host, Bryce Dunn, and joining me this week, as always, is Manuel Veth. Manu, how's your week been? It's been a busy one, right? I mean, a lot of games, hence I'm not reading out all 18 results.
Yeah, I think we'd be sitting here tomorrow if you'd be reading out all the results. Yeah, it's been a busy week and then a productive week, a fun week. I think we got lots of drama to talk about this week, so I'm really looking forward to it. How are you doing, Bryce?
Yeah, not too bad. It's good. We're going into the Christmas break, but we've got plenty to talk about, haven't we? It's going to be a rather full podcast, but I'm excited for it, eh? I'm joining Manu and myself, as always, is Chris Williams. Chris, I'd imagine that you're rather happy with the state of the Bundesliga and who's top, but also the state of the English Premier League as well, as to who's top over Christmas for that as well.
Yeah, I am, Bryce. Very, very happy. I don't know what day it is, though, because the fixtures are coming so thick and so fast in Germany and England. I have no idea what time it is, what day it is, which is why I had to apologise to everybody before we start. Too busy eating a bag of crisps.
Yeah, very honest, Chris, very honest. But joining Manu, Chris, and myself for the first time on our podcast, and hopefully not the last time either, is a man that probably doesn't need any introduction. If you're into German football, and especially if you're online at all, you should know who James Thorogood is. James, welcome on the podcast. Thank you for taking time out to join us. The final one before the winter break happens. And just for anyone that's listening that doesn't know who you are, shame on you, give us a little rundown of your background and what you do at the moment.
It's shame on no one. Firstly, I'll just say thanks for having me on. It is a pleasure. It has been a long time coming, and I'm glad it's finally happened. Well, my background, I've lived in Germany since the age of 8. I've been a Bundesliga fan for most of that time as well. I'm now a commentator. I work on websites. I do a bit of everything. It's silly to kind of list it all off, but I just live and breathe the Bundesliga. So weeks like this, where they do come thick and fast, are the weeks that I genuinely live for. As knackered as I am right now, because it is the end of a pretty strenuous time. These are the weeks I live for, and they have delivered the games in the last couple of days as well. So that always makes life easier.
Yeah, absolutely. It always helps if you work in a line of work that you enjoy, doing something fun, But guys, let's jump in. We've got lots to talk about, haven't we? And I feel let's start with the top of the table and talk about Dortmund a little bit. Chris, we'll go to you. 6 points clear at the top of the Bundesliga. It's been a fantastic first half of the season for them, hasn't it? Though, if we're going to review the last 2 match days, they finally fell to defeat, didn't they, against Düsseldorf? A little bit of a surprise.
Well, yeah, that defeat to Dusseldorf was a surprise. I don't think it's a surprise that they've been defeated at some point. Very rare for a team to go throughout an entire season not losing a match, but I would have expected them to lose maybe when we come back after the winter pause. But when I did the thoughts back from the Dusseldorf game, I said Dortmund's title chance, it all now depends on how they bounce back from this defeat. Does it put them on a bit of a spiral? Do they lose the next game? How do they respond to that? And they came out and they beat the team they needed to which was Gladbach. I think if you're going to go off the back of a defeat, you probably don't want to play your closest challengers. And it was a fascinating game, and one that they won in the end. I'm going to say maybe quite comfortably, but it could have been more. Royce hits the post at the end with a fantastic free kick. But I think that what we're going to talk about is Jadon Sancho, and not just about his goal because it was phenomenal, but how crucial he is to this Dortmund side.
Yeah, James, how impressed have you been with Sancho this first half of the season? I mean, he's really exploded onto the scene, hasn't he?
Oh, I mean, he absolutely has. He's been mesmeric at times in the current campaign, and he is just a player that I think no matter who you are a fan of, when you watch him play football, there's just a smile on your face. He has that ability to just make people delight in what he does, and he constantly expresses himself out on the pitch. His fleet-footed nature is wonderful. Now, the thing is, he's so young, and the question was whether he could sustain his trajectory. So far, so good. And I would say that there have been so many young wingers that have come through European circles in recent years. Of course, the most prominent of that is Cristiano Ronaldo. And if you remember when he broke onto the scene, there was a criticism of his decision-making and when to use his tricks. Now, Sancho does not seem to have that problem, and he's constantly making defenders guess right now. The question for me with Sancho, when will defenders catch up with him in terms of his preferred moves and those types of things, and then how will he adapt his game? But right now, he's on a fantastic trajectory. And as Chris said, his importance to this Dortmund side, not just in his goals and assists, but in the build-up play and just what he makes happen on and off the ball, is crucial.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a fantastic start for him and a great season so far for Dortmund as well. Manu, we mentioned that the Dusseldorf game obviously didn't go to plan for them, but as Chris said, it's about bouncing back, isn't it, from that, and quite an achievement to beat an impressive Gladbach side, to go into the winter break.
Yeah, I thought that was a very impressive result against Gladbach, and there's so much was made of the fact that both Gladbach and Dortmund were playing this game without their first choices in centre back, right? And Dortmund had to put Julian Weigl there. So, and I thought Julian Weigl was fantastic. I don't have the exact number in my head, but I think it was 94.6% of his passes were completed. They were very good. The one goal that they conceded, I think that's something that we actually need to discuss. I thought should have been maybe chalked off. So almost perfect performance by Dortmund's defense. And when I wrote the preview for this game on Fußballstadt.com, I was actually pretty certain that they would win this game because I think that the way that Gladbach plays into Dortmund's hands, and this 4-3-3 teams playing with 4 in the back, with 3 in midfield and 3 in attack, that just suits them better because it gives them more room in that middle third to just develop that power that they need to break opponents down. And then that's something that Fortuna Düsseldorf did so well, right? They didn't give them that space, to really go on the attack. And I mean, Düsseldorf have been excellent on that now for a couple of occasions. They took 2 points of Bayern in Munich. They took 3 points of Dortmund now. And I think, Gladbach was the perfect opponent to bounce back from an opponent like Düsseldorf that plays similar to Bruges and Hannover, right? Teams that Dortmund also really struggled with during this first half of the season, to get back on track and to go into a winter break with 3 points in the bag that are very important, right? Psychologically.
Yeah, absolutely. It's James, I mean, Mario Götze, we've seen, has set up both goals against Gladbach, have a rather convincing performance, and he's had troubled times over the last few years with injuries and that being in and out of the side. But if he can stay fit to the end of the season, what type of role can he possibly play for Dortmund, and how important is he?
Well, I think you used a very key word there, Bryce, in terms of the word role, because that's it. He has realised now that his role in Dortmund, in football circles, is not to be the superstar anymore when, the back of the World Cup goal, that's looked like where he was going to end up in his career. I think he has now realized that he can be of benefit to the team if he actually takes a step back and he isn't the superstar. And he has been humbled by a lot of things that he's gone through in life and in his career since that World Cup winning goal, that have led him to that part. But I think what we're seeing here is that he's ready to prove himself again. He's got a role with Lucien Favre's system that he can play. And let's be honest, Paco Alcácer, it seems like he cannot prove that he's going to be able to be fit for back-to-back-to-back games, 90 minutes over a long stretch of time. So Götze is going to need to step in with valuable minutes, and what he is producing in those minutes right now is also a very big positive for Dortmund. And I think his influence on this game against Gladbach especially was a sign of the fact that Mario Götze may just be on his way back. And I think that's a wonderful thing. This season could be kind of his redemption season, and that would be a lovely story, I think.
Yeah, James, I actually thought that Götze was the player of the match in that game because he set up both goals. And I thought when he came on for Paco Alcácer, that was almost a blessing in disguise because this season in particular, last few games under Favre has almost developed him to a holding striker, someone who can take the ball with the back to the goal and then redistribute it and create a lot of room for the likes of Sancho and Royce. And in that game, he was very good. For me, he was the player of the match. And that reinvention that just shows how good of a coach Favre is, right? To identify that and look, we can play Götze there. Lots of coaches have tried to play Götze as a number 9, and Favre seems to be the first one to actually give him that role, and it seems to work.
Yeah, no, 100%. I agree. I think Favre does deserve great credit. I mean, you're right. Löw tried it with the German national team, but I think Favre has built on what Götze learned under Löw and the national team, and he's brought it to a very new level. And that's the thing. Alcácer's a great player, but let's be honest, he's a goal getter. Götze brings a lot more to the build-up play than I think Alcácer does, and I think that's a valuable asset for Favre to have at his disposal.
Yeah, that's it. Götze getting 2 assists in one game for the first time for Dortmund since April 2013. So definitely a good day out for him. Chris, it's obviously been a fantastic first half of the season for Dortmund. They now have their second highest tally in the Bundesliga after 17 games. But with the January transfer window coming up, I suppose the question is there an area that they maybe need to work on, need to bring somebody in? I mean, we talked about Weigl playing in defence. Do they need to bring a defender in? What way do you see it?
I don't know if they need to go out and do any rush purchases. I mean, if you look at who they've got available to play at the back, Zagadou has been a bit of a miss. Recently with his injury, Diallo needs to come back at some point, and he will go into that centre back role. So I don't know if they need to go out and do a panic buy. It is quite interesting though to read. Especially, I think it came from the Belgian press that they're interested in Thorgan Hazard from Gladbach, because that would signify to me that at some point Christian Pulisic is on his way out. I think those two players are intrinsically linked and their futures are linked. So if that's going to be something that is sorted out in the winter window for the summer, maybe I could see that happening. Right at the moment, though, unless something really bad happens to the likes of Royce or Alcácer over the winter window, I don't think they need to go out and panic buy at all. I think they've got a really good, well-balanced squad. We've chatted for the past couple of years on this podcast about how Dortmund had a very, very good youthful side, especially under Thomas Tuchel. But maybe they were overbalanced. They had too many youth prospects. If you look now, they are a very young side, but they seem to have got the likes of Marco Reus is back to his best. Götze is 26. You can even bring in Alcácer there, 25. He's hitting his prime. So they're not really reliant on the likes of Jadon Sancho, who I'm going to say will go through some sort of wobble this season. And that's only part of his natural development. It's then who they got in reserve to bring through. So if Sancho is to have any problem, they can almost at the minute drop someone like Larson or Pulisic in there, and that's not been a problem for them. So I don't think they need to strengthen at the moment, but I think they will need to in the summer.
Let's be real. Dealing with tangled cords can make it harder to do your hair. Break free with the new Unbound Cordless Auto Curler from Conair. Get the curls and waves you want, anytime, anywhere. It's designed to let you experience the power and freedom of beauty in motion. No cords to hold you back. You get your curls and waves your way. Unplug and be unbound. Loose curls, tight curls, beachy waves. The Unbound Cordless Auto Curler makes it easy to get the looks you love. Love your look. Live Unbound. Available at Conair.com and search Unbound.
It wouldn't be the holiday season if there wasn't candy, right? Celebrate the holiday season with the Holiday Crush. They've sprinkled candy with a holiday theme and fun-packed challenges every week for 5 whole weeks, finishing on January 4th. The more challenges you complete, the better your chances of unwrapping delicious rewards. So, are you ready to crush the holidays? Play the Holiday Crush now. Download it from the App Store, Google Play, or Windows Store for free. Terms and conditions apply.
Very good. Yeah. Let's just see if they decide to stick to that or not. Manu, you wanted to talk a little bit about the goal that they conceded. This is Dortmund. The Christoph Kramer goal. I mean, he got a header, but it came off his own hand, didn't it? And it went in. But VAR should have ruled it out, but the goal stood. I mean, we talked about VAR plenty on the podcast, but what did you make of this one? This is the type of thing VAR should be sorting out, is it not?
So I did a bit of digging on this, and the Bundesliga is the only league where a goal like that would have stood. In England, and Chris, I'm really curious to hear your general opinion on this, because I know we discussed VAR plenty. But in England, this goal apparently wouldn't have stood, because every goal in England gets chalked off if there's any handball. Doesn't matter if it's natural or not. In Germany, they go by the IFAB rules, which don't have a clear saying on it. So they treat it basically the same as a penalty. So this is a gray area. I personally think the goal should not have stood. When you look the way Kramer's arms are held, and then he heads the ball down without his hands there, he wouldn't have had the ability to control the ball a second time around, and he wouldn't have been able to score. And that's why I said earlier, right? I think Dortmund's defense was actually, yes, there was a little plunder right before the cross, but I think Dortmund would have walked away with a clean sheet here if it had not been for that goal. I was personally very surprised that this goal stood. And please, everyone feel free to chip in on that. But for me, that was one that should not have counted.
Well, can I just ask a question on the back of that, Manu, then?
Yeah.
Would you have given Ilario's goal against Schalke in midweek?
Well, there was a handball on that, right?
Because for me... Okay, right, good. Yeah, then I agree then, because Ilario, I think there was a very, very faint handball in his goal. But ultimately it helped him control the ball, and ultimately I think that allowed him to score.
Yeah.
You know, he's still got a lot of work to do, but I would have chalked that one off. And so I'm with you on the Kramer one as well. I know it's a Gladbach goal, but I actually agree with you. I think it should have been chalked off.
I mean, it's the hand position, Kramer's hand position. Let's say it hits him somewhere on the arm, right? And then he has to do quite a lot of work still to get the ball under control. But in that situation, the ball almost falls on his arms, right? He has like that big bunny arms, let's call it that, right? And the ball falls onto those arms and then significantly slows down on the way down. And I think if that doesn't happen, he doesn't get control of the ball. That's just the way I see it. And I think, I mean, it's such... I realize it's such a big gray area, but I almost like the ruling that you have in other leagues where they say if he controls the ball with his hand, the goal can't stand.
Yeah, but technically that's a misapplication of law, isn't it? Because the directive is it's got to be a clear and deliberate act of movement, hand towards the ball. It all goes back. I mean, if you go way back, you remember Aubameyang's goal for Dortmund, where it comes off his arm and goes in. Now that shouldn't have never accounted for me, because that his arm's in an unnatural position and he gains an advantage from that. This one, I'm maybe on the fence on a little bit, because okay, he's jumped, but I find it hard, and this is when I find it hard when players get penalised for a foul when they go up for a header. You cannot jump like a salmon with your arms by your side. You need to have your hands out somewhere, and for this particular one, you know, he's straight on and he jumps up and the ball comes off his head onto his hands. But I can't say that they're in an unnatural position. And I certainly don't think it's a deliberate act of a movement of the hand towards the ball. So, I mean, it's 50-50, but maybe we're going to have to, you know, the people who run the game, the International Football Association Board, IFAB, are going to have to look at maybe handball becomes a true offence like offside. You're either offside or not. There's no grey area. So either the ball touches your hand and it's classed as handball or not. That's maybe the only way that there's going to be, a significant line in the sand here. I think everybody's well used to the fact now that if your nose is offside, you're offside. Doesn't matter. You can be an inch offside, you're offside. If the ball touches your hand, maybe that's handball. Maybe this deliberate, maybe accidental doesn't need to come into it anymore. The game's played at such a pace. But there's 30 games, no, it's better. There's like 35 cameras around the stadium, which will cover it from every single angle. So the referee's got no chance really of getting something like this right. But it's one of those where if it goes against you, you're livid. But if it goes for you, you're going, oh, well, okay, yeah, these things, happen time and time again. It's not like a Maradona where his hand's out deliberately, or he puts his hand out and the ball dinks it and it's an unnatural position and he finishes with his foot. It's a 50-50 for me, that. But I think I can understand why it was definitely given. But I could have understood why it was chalked off if not.
Yeah. Well, that's it. I think it's the ambiguity of the application of the laws actually is proven by the fact that VAR didn't jump in here because they didn't deem it a clear and obvious error. Because if there was no ambiguity when it came to the application of the laws, they could have been able to say whether it was or was not a clear and obvious error. But they decided not to act. So I think that's very telling.
Yeah, I think what bothers me is that gray area that we have with the handball, period, right? I like what Michael Zorc said, and he said after the game, maybe I'm too old to understand it. So that is, I guess, we'll be able to discuss this forever until they come up with a definite rule and say maybe if any handball was in a play, then a goal can't stand. And maybe that is the way we have to handle the situation.
Well, yeah, but also, I mean, the point I was trying to make as well is how are we as fans meant to deal with the ambiguity of this when referees seem unsure of it as well?
Yeah, that's a hard one. I mean, that's one of the reasons why we love this game, so we can discuss it forever and ever, right?
And I know the IFAB are looking at changing at the end of this season when they sit in consultation, with the 4 UK home nations, and they sit down, they look at the rules of the game. They are looking at whether to take out this is it a deliberate act? And then they're going to put it through, is it a natural position? Well, that's just swapping one subjective opinion for another. So I think even if they do take out the word deliberate, and then we'll just start talking about, well, is that unnatural? Well, maybe that's the way he jumps. So that is a natural position from his arm. We're going to be talking about the same things, just maybe a little differently come next season.
Yeah, there's always going to be plenty to talk about with football, isn't there? Whether it's VAR, handballs, or God knows what. But we're going to move on. We're going to leave that for now because I think we could just spend a whole podcast talking about it on its own. We're going to talk about Bayern. So Bayern have been pretty good of late, it has to be said, winning 5 on the bounce. They won midweek against RB Leipzig, and then Niko Kovac beat his former side in Frankfurt. But we're going to talk a little bit about them off the field. They're trying to do a bit of business to bring in Lucas Hernandez from Atletico Madrid, the 22-year-old French defender. James, what exactly do you know about Lucas Hernandez, and is this a move in the right direction for Bayern?
Oh, well, I mean, I think if you were anyone that watched the World Cup during the summer, then you'll know who Lucas Hernandez is and the fact that he impressed with France as they went on to win the World Cup. And it seems like he's very highly regarded in Atletico Madrid circles as well. And to be honest, when I've seen Atletico play, he has been one of the most impressive performers. I think it's a very interesting move for Bayern because it shows that they are firstly getting to grips with the new age transfer market. They're also dipping into younger players, and there is the potential, of course, that Benjamin Pavard could be a partner for Hernandez if they want to use that as a centre-back pairing or just have a bit of French flair in their back line. It doesn't really matter. So I just think it shows that Bayern, I think the reason this has come out now and the reason probably Bayern have let it come out is because they are under pressure to deliver big name money signings right now after not proving active in the summer transfer window and then receiving a lot of criticism for an aging squad. And I know we'll talk about Franck Ribéry and the fact that he is belittling those criticisms right now, but the Hernandez move is a very positive one for me in Bayern, from Bayern's perspective, and I think he will just be the first block of dominoes that will be set to fall this summer.
And Manu, how close is this deal from being done, and what type of money are we talking about?
Well, a deal is not done until the guy shows up at the press conference holding up the shirt, right? But when you read between the lines, Karl-Heinz Rummenigge's statements is, what did he say? Thankfully, they have exit clauses in Spain that make it a little bit easier to deal with transfers like that, right? So that suggests to me that Bayern are more than willing to trigger the release clause that is 80 to 85 million euros, depending who you have read, who you've listened to. I've spoken to someone in Munich and they said it looks like Bayern will get this done one way or another. Now there's two options on the table. One option is they do it January 1st. So what they will have to do, they will have to go to the Spanish FA and deposit the exit clause, right? And that will essentially make Hernandez contract property of Bayern Munich. It appears that they have already agreed with Hernandez himself. The other option is, of course, they can go to Atletico now, as of January 1st and say, look, he wants to come to us. You got two options. Either he's coming to us January 1st for 85 million, or we negotiate this deal down, let's say 60 million, and we're going to leave him with you until the end of the season. I think there's pro and contras for that. I think that we all know who Bayern got in the Champions League, in the next round of the Champions League. There's a lot of people on this podcast I know that have big interest in that game. And I think Bayern are under a lot of pressure to do something right away because of the fixture against Liverpool. And because when you look at the current squad, the current squad in current form, yes, they just won 2 games. We'll get to talk about them in a moment. I think might be a little stretched against a very dynamic Liverpool side. So they need someone like Hernandez to help them in defense. And they might need someone else in attack as well to just give them that little bit of an edge. Because, you know, we talk about the Frankfurt game, Serge Gnabry and Coman were the 2 best players in recent weeks. And both of them are struggling with injuries again. So I can see them maybe doing something in that department as well. But yeah, this is basically where they are with Hernandez. And I think, of course, Atletico will do everything in their power to prevent this deal. But it looks like, from what you hear, like Bayern seem very confident that they get this deal done one way or another.
Look, everybody knows that you pull Salah, Mane, Firmino on the 17th and you break the world record transfer on the 19th, you're worried.
Yeah.
Very much.
Yeah, but it's true. I mean, Chris, you're absolutely 100% right. I mean, this is no coincidence.
I mean, that reeks of shit. Look what we pulled. What have we got at the back? No one. Quick, go out and buy someone.
Yeah. The idea of Hummels, Boateng and Zula up against Liverpool's front three is delectable, depending on which perspective you're coming from.
Yeah, but I mean, this is a tremendous move. If you look, it's going to almost double what they paid before if indeed this deal goes through, which, you know, as you both have said, clubs can either snip these sort of transfers in the bud or they can allow them to run. And I think Bayern have definitely allowed this one to run. And yeah, they do need a centre-back. How many times have we talked about it? James, you've obviously talked about it lots of times. They do need a centre-back because on current form, Sula, I think, has been playing wonderful, but he needs a partner he can depend on. And I don't think he can either depend on Boateng or Hummels at the moment. But if Hernandez comes in, all of a sudden that back four looks a lot better. And further up the pitch, Bayern haven't had any problems recently. And I think the way they've gone about that can show us why maybe they're looking at strengthening the back. I mean, look at Ajax. That Ajax game again was another advertisement for, you know, defending and a defence. So it's going to be interesting to see where this one goes. And Manu, I think you're quite right. I mean, that's how the deal for Neymar was done, wasn't it? The country of Qatar just deposited £2 billion in the Spanish FA's bank account, and next thing he's off. So I think Bayern will probably be interested to do that straight away, but it's whether they do or not. It certainly go against everything that I've read and heard about that Hoeneß and Rummenigge have talked about for the past 2, 3, 4 seasons. But at some point, you've got to catch up. There's no, as they say, you know, there's no pockets in the shroud. You can't take that money away with you if they've got it. And by everything we've been led to believe, Bayern are exceptionally cash rich. then they need to go out and spend it, because at the moment, they're behind Dortmund and they're looking a bit fragile in the Champions League at times. Just about got past AEK at once. Let's not even talk about Benfica, because I think they were poor, and then Ajax proved a real test. Well, this next round and any potential rounds after that, they're going to need a stable back line. I nearly said strong and stable then, but we should avoid that phrase.
No, I mean, the one last point to make about that is that even this release clause, 80 to 85 million, depending on what you read, that is a deal for a 22-year-old World Cup winner who is regarded as one of the best young centre-backs in the world right now. And so Bayern are dipping into the big value transfer market that they've tried to avoid, but they're still doing it in a most Bayern-savvy way.
Yeah, it is a typical
and sometimes
Bayern deal.
You've got to spend that money. And this isn't an English football podcast, but Liverpool splashed out exceptionally big on Virgil van Dijk, and he sorted the defence out, pretty much single-handedly. So if Bayern can do that, if Hernandez has the same sort of effect on Bayern's Bundesliga play, we could see this 6 points get cut to 3, get cut to 2. They might even, get over a negative swing. And as we get to the real business end, and we've got a proper title fight come the back end of April.
Yeah, and guys, they have the money. I did an article for Forbes on how much money Bayern have. And look, their revenue was 657 million euros this year.
Was that a very, really quick article? Did he just say a lot, full stop?
Yeah, they have a lot of money. I basically wrote that. That's a 1,000-word article. I basically did that, repeated that 10 times. No, but they have a ton of money. And the revenue last year was 657 million euros, and they haven't run a deficit in about 15 years. So that money's just been building and building and building. They don't have to share it with anyone because they don't have shareholders, right? They're not owned by anyone. That money is just sitting in a bank account. And it's kind of like, as you said, what are they going to do with it? Is it just going to rot there in some bank vault, or are they actually finally going to spend it? Because they're going to make money again next year. And even if they have a big money signing, there's 4 or 5 big name players that are going to probably leave the squad, right? So that salary all becomes available as well. So they have to eventually do something with it. And so 85 million euros sounds like a lot for Bayern, because it will break not only the world record transfer fee for a defender, but it will also double what they've spent, as you said, Chris. But I mean, what else are they going to do with it, right?
Well, James, I suppose you always talk about Hernandez coming in. What exactly does it mean for someone like Mats Hummels? Is his time at Bayern coming to an end?
Well, I think this is a tough one to judge from the outside, but it seems like Boateng and Hummels have both lost a lot of faith this season. And I think it's just a sign that they are looking to the future, because they realize they've got an aging squad, and the back line hasn't helped itself this season because they haven't produced the level of performances that A, we've been accustomed to, and B, that Bayern demand. They have looked fragile, they have looked vulnerable, and Zula has been the lone bright spark. So Hummels and Boateng are almost having to face up, almost like a fair few of the World Cup squad in Germany ranks have had to, that they don't quite have the stature that they thought they did on the back of the World Cup win 5 years ago, 4 years ago. So it's an interesting one that they're having to get used to. I think Hummels will stay at Bayern. I think he's just going to have to get used to a different role. I don't think he's necessarily going to be the game in, game out starting player. I think there's going to be a little more of a healthy rotation with Kovac. And let's be honest, if you're Hummels and you've got Pavard, if you've got Hernandez and you've got Zula, you've got some wonderful players to work with and nurture yourself as an elder statesman in the group. So I think Hummels has still got a role at that club. It's whether his ego can settle for that role.
Yeah, interesting. Manu, if we talk about other possible players that may come in, I mean, Timo Werner's one that we've heard plenty of, but those possible news reports, whether they're true or not, seem to continue. But also Kai Havertz from Leverkusen, he's now being linked as well. I mean, do you see there being any possibility of these players coming in, maybe not in January, but in the summer?
Timo Werner's given another interview that leave many in Germany baffled. I think there's many ways you can interpret the interview he's given. And I know, Chris, we've spoken off air a little bit about this. He said,
we did indeed.
We did indeed, because Timo Werner is not the best when it comes to interviews. This is something that we've noticed before. You can interpret it that either in Germany there's only one club that you want to play for, and that club could be Bayern, or you can interpret it that if he wants to stay in Germany, then it will be only at Leipzig. I'm not sure. I know that Bayern are very interested in Timo Werner, and I know that they would like to get a deal for him done, like it is the case with Lucas Hernandez, sooner rather than later, because their big worry is that by next summer, there will be a bunch of clubs from all over the world coming in to try to get the striker, get Timo Werner to sign for them, and that will mean a price war. And Bayern, James, you already said it, they're very astute when it comes to, they try to get the deals done early because it's their own money. It's money that they had to generate. They can't just dip in some oligarch's pocket or like PSG do and just ask Qatar for a bunch of money. They have to make that money themselves. So they are trying to get this deal done sooner rather than later. If they want to get a deal done for Werner, but if they really want to get him done, then they're looking for it for maybe even this winter, because they expect that he will be just too expensive next summer, because a bunch of clubs will then try to sign him, unless, or maybe Leipzig is even able to renew his contract. But yeah, that interview, leaves the door wide open for speculations.
And Chris, if we go back to the performances on the field, a good 3-0 victory against Eintracht for Bayern. It puts them now just 6 points behind Dortmund going into the winter break. Gives them a little bit more hope this run of games that they've had recently.
Yeah, they've been very good recently. And yeah, with Dortmund slipping up the other night, I think Bayern would have hoped that maybe Gladbach could have done them a favour and picked up a positive result there, either a win or a draw, but it didn't happen. But yeah, Bayern are looking a lot better. They certainly look more of a happy side. If you see them after their goal celebration, I'm going to use the word fortunate. I was fortunate enough to watch their Christmas celebrations, was left on the Bundesliga World Feed the other night. So watch that, and after they came out against their final home game, the midweek game, they looked very happy. They were all laughing and smiling and hugging, and Niko Kovac looked happy. Everybody looked happy. And I mentioned that in the Three Thoughts After. I mean, and that is a polar opposite. If we look to October, where, nobody was happy, just a little bit after that, there was even Instagram posts from footballers' wives about, their players, their husbands not being happy. And that looks a little bit of a distant memory. I'm pretty sure this winter pause has probably come at the wrong time for Bayern. They maybe wanted a couple more matches under their belt at this time of year to see how Dortmund get on and to see if they can maybe cut that lead a little bit. But yeah, it's all set up for when we come back. And the only thing that worries me, and I've said this loads and loads of times, and I'll say it again, is Frank Ribery is 35 and he's played wonderfully the last two games. Muller is intrinsic to this system that Kovac has maybe come across the last couple of weeks. He's 29. Lewandowski's he's 30. So there's going to come to a point, maybe the back end of the season, late winter, early spring, where some of these players, if they're playing so much when we come back, might start to get a little bit leggy. That's my only concern. I've got Bryce, unless the younger players they've got like Koeman and Gnabry can really come in and step up to the level that the older statesmen are shown at the moment. Yeah,
James, Chris just mentioned it. Ribery's had a fantastic last few games, hasn't he? And he scored 3 in his last 2. People keep talking about him and Robin, fizzling out, really not being the players they used to be. But he's out to prove a few people wrong at the moment, isn't he?
Yeah, it's funny with Frank Ribery. I mean, you can't not be a fan of what he's done throughout his career. But when it comes to his personality traits, there have been some questions asked throughout his career. Now, why I mention that is I find it fantastic that when it came to the siege mentality that Bayern started to employ when they were being heavily criticized by the media, and there was that press conference with Ernest and Rummenigge and Salihamidzic talking about respect and all this type of stuff, they have banded together in light of that adversity, and they do have this siege mentality. And if anyone embodies that more than anyone else at Bayern, it's Frank Ribery, because this guy loves a battle, he loves a war, and he loves to prove people wrong. And that is exactly what he is doing this season, belying his veteran status with some incredible performances, but he is just a fighter at heart. And that's what we see in these performances. And that's why, despite his age, he's still producing these types of performances. So it's wonderful to see. And let's be honest, Ribéry and Robben can still do a job for Bayern. It's just that Bayern have very high expectations, and these guys cannot be expected to meet those expectations on a week in, week out basis anymore at their age.
No, definitely not. And I think Chris was right in saying as well that the winter break has just come at the wrong time for Ribéry and the Bavarians there. Manu, we're going to go to you about the next topic. Talk about your favourite side, Bayer Leverkusen, eh? So things obviously haven't went that well for them this year. And yeah, they finally changed their coach, haven't they? Even though they won 3-1 at the weekend, beating Hertha Berlin, Herrlich is no longer in his position come Sunday morning. And yeah, who has been brought in? Unbelievable.
I'm never going to hear the end of that. Yeah, there's a prediction.
We've all been there, Manu. We've all been there.
Yeah. To be fair, 13 points out of the last 6 games is pretty good. So
you are clutching at straws.
No better time. No better time, you think.
Not even plastic straws, soggy paper straws.
It also adds the question, why did they get rid of Herrlich now, eh? Yeah. And yeah, I was waiting for you to break it. Who did they bring in, Manu?
Yeah, they brought in Peter Bosz. I'm really looking forward to this discussion because we all remember what happened the last time Peter Bosz signed in the Bundesliga. I think he at Ajax he was fantastic. The side that reached the Europa League final, of course, right? With a lot of very young talent. On the other hand, he didn't win the league, and he didn't win the Eredivisie. And in the Netherlands, you can play attacking football. You can get away with it much more than you can in the Bundesliga. And that transition, and we have a history of Dutch coaches, and especially the attacking minded ones, that were fantastic in the Netherlands. When they made the jump to Germany, really struggled with the difference. I think one of the few that came in was Huub Stevens, of course. And Huub Stevens, if he could play with 12 defenders, he would. So he had a very different mindset than many other Dutch coaches had. So it's really interesting that Leverkusen went with Peter Bosz. They, of course, wanted to sign Peter Bosz that summer that Dortmund signed him. They were interested in him as well. I'm not 100% sure if he is the right signing, though. The timing is, in one way, the timing is really perfect for them because they now have a winter break where they can prepare. On the other hand, they have just collected 13 points out of the last 6 games. That's a pretty good average. And they're only 3 points behind where they were last year when you take the point total. So they actually seem to have recovered. So on that hand, I think it's poor timing. On the other hand, if you're making a coaching change, this is the time you do it. And then I'm really questioning whether Peter Bosz is the guy that will bring, that will ensure that Leverkusen, the thing that ultimately got Herrlich is that they won some games 5-0, like the cup game against Gladbach, and then lost others 3 or 4-0 to teams like Leipzig. I struggle to see Peter Bosz being the guy that will bring defensive stability to Bayer Leverkusen. That's just my personal opinion. And I'm really curious to hear what Chris, you, for example, you were a close observer of what he did at Dortmund. Defensive stability is not something he added to that side.
That's my answer. They're not, in all seriousness. I think it is the right decision. I think a head coach change was needed. I just really, and I said this 2 weeks ago, I really think they missed a trick by not snapping up Ralph Hasenhüttl when they had the chance. Now, maybe they may have spoken to him and he turned the decision down because he wanted, the whole year off as a sabbatical, and he changed his mind once he saw Southampton's proposition and the bright lights and money of the Premier League. But I think that would have been a better fit. Maybe Peter Bosz is going to come in and change everybody's lasting opinion of him. But I mean, you're right. They do need defensive stability, and I certainly didn't see that once sides figured out the ways Dortmund side was playing. Because let's not forget, they did start the season quite well, but once sides figured out how they could get around, that sort of fast football they were playing, and they wilted quite quickly. So it's going to be a real challenge for him. Obviously, he thinks he can do it, or he wouldn't have come back. And those at Bayer Leverkusen who are in charge think that he's got the ability to do it. It's going to be interesting, but if he doesn't get off to a flyer when they come back, I think he could be under a lot of pressure early on. And I mean, one thing that I did notice, especially this last match day, is that the players who maybe haven't stepped up to the plate of last started playing really, really well. Havertz, we all know, he got a bit of a lucky goal, and at some point we should probably talk about the fact of those 3 horrendous goalkeeping and defensive errors that littered this match day. But he played well. Julian Brandt played well. Volland looks a lot better. He was looking, maybe he'd been in a bit of dip of form 6 to 8 weeks ago. And Bailey's looking a lot better. And I don't know if the players knew he was going after this game, but this particular match day, they looked a hell of a lot better than I've seen recently. And maybe that was because they knew they wanted to give him a final swan song because he was on his way out. But yeah, Peter Bosz fills me with dread for Leverkusen, because I don't quite think he's going to be the coach to take them out of the fight that we're in at the moment, because they lose a couple when they come back. They're straight back into the wrong end of things.
Yeah, I mean, James, I'd be interested to hear your opinion on this as well. I mean, is Bosz the right man? The two other fellas here seem to suggest it's probably not the ideal coach for the role. But also, I mean, the timing was a little bit funny after they had looked a bit better recently, hadn't they? I can understand it from a winter break perspective, but the results surely are the things that talk, right?
Well, this is it. I commentated the game yesterday for the Bundesliga World Feed, and what I found fascinating about this situation with Herrlich was that it was just a couple of weeks ago after the draw with Nuremberg that Rudi Völler had said, basically, I'm demanding 8 or 9 points from the last 4 games. And the fact is, they got 9 points from the last 4 games. So I find it strange that Rudi Völler actually publicly has gone back on his word by letting Herrlich go, despite actually meeting the demands that he set. Now, I do agree that Herrlich being let go is the right decision for Bayer Leverkusen. I agree with the lads on Peter Bosz, where it's not convincing. I just looked it up really quickly, but we talked about the impressive start that Dortmund had to the season last year, and they won, 6 of their first 7. But it was in the 6 games after that they conceded 18 goals. And I know they had Leipzig, Bayern and Schalke in there, but that is still a stupidly bad record for a side like Dortmund who had the players they had last season. So no, I'm not convinced that Bosz is going to come in and sort the defensive frailty. What I'm questioning is whether he can produce the attacking performances we know from Leverkusen where it actually offsets their need for defensive stability. He's got players that are very exciting at his disposal. And I, for one, will be interested to see what he does with this squad, but I'm not convinced he's going to rescue their bid for a top 6 finish this season.
The one thing I might want to add, and this is maybe, and this is a big maybe, and lots of ifs and buts, but Lucien Favre, and you probably remember this, James, his first time in Hertha, he didn't leave Hertha on the best note either, right? And got a second chance at Gladbach and did a lot better there. He learned from his previous mistakes, because fundamentally the ideas that Bosz brings to the table, the style of football he wants to play, they're good. There's good ideas there. The question for me is, has he learned from the mistakes he's made at Dortmund? And that is maybe the one thing the one positive thing if you're a Bayer Leverkusen fan.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. I think it is a case of, yes, has he learnt those lessons from his time with Dortmund? And I like the fact that Leverkusen are willing to give him a chance, because I say that and it's just strange, because if they were willing to give him a chance, why not just stick with Herrlich at least for now, given that there was an upswing in results? They have made it through top of their group in the Europa League. The problem was, I think the real reason behind this, and the reason he's been let go, is that these results recently were in spite of Herrlich, not because of him. I think he doesn't quite have the tactical nous that they were expecting. I think his demeanor with the players has been criticized in the press as well. So I think there were a lot of factors working against Herrlich. And let's be honest, Peter Bosz was able to get the best out of his Dortmund side in those opening 7 games of the season. It was just a case of things caught up with him and he didn't adapt. So if that is the lesson that he learned from that and he can apply that with Leverkusen, I think that's a good thing. This is why I'm saying that I'm not convinced it's going to save their top 6 bid, because I don't think he's got enough time in the second half of the season to do exactly what he needs to do with this team to get them into a top 6 finish. I think he needs at least half a season to transition, and then maybe next season we can talk about them pushing back into the European place.
Short winter break this year too. Only 4 weeks. That's not a lot of time.
We'll have to see what he can do with those 4 weeks, aren't we? It'll be interesting to see. But guys, we've been asked by somebody on Twitter to do some mid-season awards. So here we are. I feel we're going to have to do a player, team, and possibly a personality that you would like to highlight and think that they're deserving of this award. Chris, let's go to you first. I mean, is it going to be as obvious as Dortmund and Sancho?
Oh, well, I'm stuck between Sancho and Marco Reus, because I think a fit, healthy Marco Reus is what's propelling Dortmund to where they are at the minute. I think he's the ticking heartbeat of that team. He knows the dressing room inside out. I think he's a leader on the pitch. He's a leader off the pitch. So I may hand my player award to him. Team, I'm going to go with Dortmund, because they've come into the season and they started excellently, and they should be, in inverted commas, a team under transition, new manager, new players, etc. They haven't. They've stepped up to that, and to make it a full clean sweep for Dortmund, personality-wise, I'm going to go for Jadon Sancho, because he's a young, exciting teenager, and you see him in interviews, not just on the television, but you see him in interviews in a mix zone, and also he did a very, very good interview for the Dortmund magazine for the fixture I was there for against Hertha Berlin, and it gave a really good insight into his personality. So unfortunately for nobody of a Dortmund persuasion, I've probably ruined their Christmas by going for a full sweep.
Yes, indeed. Well, let's go to James then before we go over to you, Manu. Who would your player of the season so far be?
Now, look, I mean, firstly, Chris has just stolen my thunder on the personality one. I'll come to that in a second. But when it came to the player, I was thinking about this before. It's ridiculously difficult to pick out one player. I was tempted by Sebastian Aller because I like his story arc, and his performances in the first half of the season, over the course of the whole first half of the season, have genuinely surprised me. If I'm talking about surprise, Jonas Hoffmann is the player that has surprised me the most. But I have to go for Marco Reus when it's my player, because, aside from his 11 goals and 6 assists, what he is doing with this squad is incredible. To see him at the forefront of a genuine title charge from Dortmund and fulfilling the role of captain as if he was born to do it, and then dazzling with his dynamism in the final third. For me, that has been the highlight of the season so far, and long may it continue. To take a less popular route with the team, I'm going to throw Wolfsburg out there. I commentated their game today against Augsburg, and it was a thrilling fixture to end 2018 for both sides. Wolfsburg did come away with the win, but I think it's just fantastic to see that after they went through years of to a reputation they no longer deserved, and buying players that didn't fit the stature they thought they had, they were deservedly brought crashing back down to earth. But now they seem to have moved out of the shadow of the successful era. They're back in form. Bruno Labbadia is having a bit of redemption there as well. Their football isn't pretty, but it's purposeful and positive. And so I like what I'm seeing from Wolfsburg. And let's be honest, the fact that they're finishing in 5th at the end of the first half of the season is, for me, the biggest surprise of the season so far. And then I was going to say Sancho for the personality as well. And because I can't scramble off the top of my head quite so quickly, I'm not going to throw another name out there, but I picked him for personality. I thought I was taking a different route to the way everyone else would, but it turns out Chris did the exact same thing, which is fine. It's all good. But yeah, he expresses himself on the pitch. His purest personality is seen when he's got the football at his feet, and that is wonderful to see.
Some fine answers there, James. Very good. even though you stole one or two from me, which I thought I was going left field. But, damn. Manu, let's go to you. Player of the season so far?
Yeah, Marco Reus. 100% Marco Reus. I saw the interview with him yesterday on ZDF, the German state television station, and he's just so confident right now. He's long forgotten his days where he drove without a driver's license. He's really developed into a real personality and a leader for the side. And the fact that he stayed in Dortmund, even though it was a very difficult year last year, and I think he could have had a chance to go somewhere else. The fact that he's now fit, and I really hope he stays fit. I really do hope that he is able to lead this side to a German championship. I really think that would be, for a player who's missed out on so many titles and opportunities, and let's remember the 2014 World Cup. He would have been in that side. He would have played a very big role for that side. 2018, he was one of the few German players who did their jobs, knowing that this could be the last chance for him to win the German championship with the team of his hometown. I think that would be amazing, and he has done everything in the Hinrunde to guarantee that. I think if he's not healthy, this side will be in a lot of trouble. Jadon Sancho here, Jadon Sancho there. I think he's been the key. So he's my player of the Hinrunde. Team of the Hinrunde. Dortmund is kind of the obvious choice, so I'm going with someone else. I'm going to give it to Eintracht Frankfurt. The Europa League performance is outstanding to win 6 out of 6. Remember, no German team has done that in any European competition that has group stage, to win 6 out of 6. They've done it, and they have done it in a very difficult group of Marseille and Lazio. So I really was impressed by that, and I was also really impressed by the fans and the way the fans carried this team. They're really good advertising for the Europa League, a competition that I feel is not getting enough attention at times. And they really show that this is a competition that people should pay attention to. And I think Chris said it last week, they have a genuine chance to maybe even win this competition. So I think that'd be really something really interesting to see. And that's actually, I want to stay with Frank for personality of the Hinrunde. For me, Freddy Bobic, the sporting director, to lose all those key players that won the German Cup with Frankfurt, and to lose Niko Kovac, and then go out left field to sign Adi Hütter from Young Boys Bayern, to bring in and identify players like Haller, Jovic, Gazinovic, Ante Rebic, and to be able to actually keep them at this club, to build on something like that and to develop a team continuously like that, and to have a team performing on the level they are. And yes, they lost 3-0 to Bayern. I think that result was a bit high in the end, especially that third goal. Up until the 80th minute, they were pretty much even. Remember, only 17 match days ago, they lost 5-0 to Bayern in the Super Cup, and they were nowhere near where they are now. And that's because Bobic was able to identify the right people for the right job, and he's done it now 3 years in a row. And for me, that makes him the personality of the Hinrunde.
Can I just say, I think that I love that answer, and I love the fact that Frankfurt have gotten some love, Manu, and I think you're right to point out their Europa League campaign, because they deserve it. And I actually was very close to picking them over Wolfsburg for my team of the Hinrunde. And actually, because you said that, I just want to throw a name out there for personality, Danny Da Costa. Yeah. Because if you did see the interview he did with himself after the Europa League game against Limassol, I think you need to go watch it. It was absolutely fantastic, and it showed personality. He's a wonderful guy. I interviewed him for UEFA, and I just thought that was a wonderful moment. So.
And he's a very good player. I mean, that's another guy that Bobic went out for, got him, and I think he's on his way to the national team. I don't understand why Leverkusen let him go. Yeah.
Well, guys, I'm going to weigh in with my choices. As I said, I would try and be a little bit left field, but my player of the first half of the season was someone James has already mentioned. Yes, we've mentioned Sancho and Reus, and yes, they fully deserve it. But I'm going to go Sebastian Haller, who has contributed. He's contributed towards 17 goals so far this season, which is half. That's right, half of Frankfurt's goals in the league. So I think a lot of people wouldn't have seen this coming. So I think he deserves a bit of a shout out. Team, I was going to go for Wolfsburg as well. I can't believe that they've done as well as they actually have. Also, I feel a little bit bad because I had them down to do rather poorly in my pre-season predictions. So I feel a little bit bad there. Personality, I got to go for Pizarro. He scored again this season. And yes, he may not score very many goals, but he's still turning up every season and he's scoring, and he's now 40 years old. And I think that shows a lot of heart, and he's meant to be a very nice guy. So I'm going to go for those three. But guys, that more or less does it, doesn't it? We've got halfway through the season. I suppose the only thing left to do is to go to James and just say, are Dortmund going to win the league?
Put me on the spot. Yes. I think they've got enough about them to hold on to this. I think Bayern will drop points in the second half of the season, and while they do sniff blood right now, I don't think it's going to be enough. I have faith. I have faith in Borussia Dortmund that finally we're going to see a title race that ends without Bayern winning the title.
Fantastic stuff. Yes, I think it would be healthy for the Bundesliga, wouldn't it? But guys, before we say have a great Christmas to each other. James, is there anything you would like to draw people's attentions to online?
I mean, look, I work for Bundesliga.com. I work on the DFL World feed for commentaries. I'd love you to tune in if you can. I just don't know where it's available. I'm at Deutsche Welle as well, and I'm Schalke's and Frankfurt's reporter for UEFA. So if you're in the match center at any point, then thank you for joining me. Those are really the only things. I would just say that I would want to say, having been on the show, it's a pleasure to have been on. I think you guys do a fantastic job at what you do in covering the Bundesliga, and I appreciate that. And let's be honest, this is one of the best seasons we've had to cover in a long time. And I'm so excited for the second half of the season, but I am just a little bit more excited for a 4-week break, if I'm honest.
Yes, I would say that there's probably a few guys on this podcast that would agree with that as well. James, thank you very much for coming on and your kind words. Manu, I would imagine that the Football Grad Network's not going to be that quiet over the Christmas period, even though the Bundesliga is coming to a pause.
Yeah, I usually use this time of the year to write a couple of features that I've meant to write for some time. So there will be stuff happening. I can't tell you exactly what yet, but there will be stuff regularly published on there. And you can find my work. I joined Forbes at the beginning of the month. I'm doing their Bundesliga coverage, so you can find me on Forbes.com as well.
And Chris, apart from eating yourself silly, which you were telling us about before the podcast came on, what have you got going on in the next few weeks that you'd maybe like to draw people's attention to?
Well, there's a bit of a Bundesliga pause, as we all know. I will be hopefully getting to do some feature writing for footballstat.com. You can find me still working over the Christmas period. It's Christmas Eve tomorrow as we record this, Bryce, but I'm up at 7 o'clock in the morning for a Liverpool Wolves recap and a Liverpool Newcastle preview with Radio City in Liverpool tomorrow morning. So no sleeping for me. I'd also like to thank James for coming on, because it's brilliant, because I listen to James all the time, have done when he's been on Talking Football, have done because I'm very lucky enough to get the Bundesliga World feed, so I listen to his commentary all the time. So James, thank you for coming on. And I'd also like to wish a happy Christmas to Hannover 96, because their coach, Andre Breitenreiter, said that if they didn't pick up 3 points on this match day, they'd be training over Christmas.
Great shout out, Chris.
Apparently that got cancelled. Apparently he went back on his word.
Oh, don't ruin the magic.
What a Scrooge. What an absolute Scrooge, eh? Guys, that does it for the podcast for the first half of the season. But we will not be taking a 4-week break. We will be back, but maybe not just as regular as normal. So you will hear from us all rather soon. But we at the Football Grad Network and on the podcast would like to wish you a great Christmas. Thanks for tuning in. As always, I've been your host, Bryce Dunn. You can find me on Twitter at BryceDunn11. And until next time, auf Wiedersehen.
Ich warte seit Wochen auf diesen Tag und tanz vor Freude über den Asphalt, als wär's ein Rhythmus, als gäb's ein Lied, das mich immer weiter durch die Straßen zieht. Komm dir entgegen, dich abzuholen.
It wouldn't be the holiday season if there wasn't candy, right? Celebrate the holiday season with the Holiday Crush. They've sprinkled candy with a holiday theme and fun-packed challenges every week for 5 whole weeks, finishing on January 4th. The more challenges you complete, the better your chances of unwrapping delicious rewards. So, are you ready to crush the holidays? Play the Holiday Crush now. Download it from the App Store, Google Play, or Windows Store for free. Terms and conditions apply.
Thank you for listening to Believe. You can show support to your host by subscribing to the show and giving us a 5-star rating on your preferred platform. Check us out at Believe.com and search for BLEAV on YouTube.